What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing? Check out this awesome comment I got 18 hours ago. Quote, more and more our societies have been eating a plant-based diet, unquote. I guess he's quoting me. I must have said that in that video, something along those lines. Fair enough, that's what I believe. Continuing, retarded statement based on nothing. You could analyze the meat industry and see its growth. To that I would say populations are growing, so naturally all food industries are likely to grow. So I wouldn't be surprised if the meat industry were growing. Continuing, but even anecdotal evidence is enough. Even anecdotal evidence is enough because it's coming from a vegan. If you're a carnist, carnivore, or just a meat eater, one and the same. Well, you need studies, not anecdotal evidence, all right? Please understand how the world works, everybody. Literally, continuing, every day, for every meal, most of the plate of the average person is composed, just by weight, not even calories, of animal products. I know because I observed the hundreds of people in the cafeteria of my university. You know, I went to the university to learn. And while I was at the university, I was there learning, not trying to tell everybody how much I already know, but maybe things have changed at the university. Continuing, oh wait. Okay, so he observes that in his university, people eat tons of animal products, so the whole world must as well. Continuing, the fact that someone could come up with such a false claim, not backed by data, nor everyday life, is a... So, what he says, right, he's seeing his everyday life, but what I see doesn't count. Why? Well, because I'm not vegan. I hope you guys understand how the world works. The fact that someone could come up with such a false claim is a clear sign of not only bias, but of mental illness. Probably that bacon-induced dementia is already showing up. Could you cite some sources, please? So, why are vegans so angry? Well, when you take meat out of the carnivore's diet, they get depressed, angry, and then they die. B12 deficiency, most likely. BBC staff fume as staff canteen bans meat. Texan college bans pork from cafeteria because it can cause obesity. Okay. German environment minister bans meat at official functions. Interesting. Anyway, you know, when I made the statement that the world, America, eats a plant-based diet, that's because, you know, I used to live there and I would see people's shopping carts at the local supermarket. I'd go to restaurants, I'd go to dinners with friends, and I observed what people ate, right? That's where my data came from, right? And that person is entitled to say whatever they will. But what they observe, well, might have something to do with, or it might be influenced, how they interpret the world. And we know this is true with ideologically possessed vegans. Because they are ideologically possessed, they're not interested in truth, but they interpret the world, they twist reality to fit their preconceived notions, right? That's how ideologies tend to work, unfortunately. But anyway, my observation, I guess, wasn't enough, so I found this study entitled Sustainability of Meat-Based and Plant-Based Diets and the Environment. Now, whenever you hear this word sustainability, as in the case of the German minister banning meat, and maybe this Texas college, maybe even CNN, that is most likely part of this United Nations agenda which isn't any sort of a theory, we know this, to put the whole world on a plant-based diet. Okay? And this study, I have no doubt, is either funded by the UN or, you know, the people that conducted it work for the UN. But anyway, they studied meat-based and what they call meat-based and a plant-based diet in the United States. And they provided us with this chart. Now, where it says meat-based diet, their data came from FAO STAT, which is a UN data gathering database. And as far as the lacto-ovo-vegetarian, or what they will call as a plant-based diet, well, those numbers were estimated. Or in other words, we made them what we needed them to be to fit our conclusion that has to please our masters. Yeah? Predetermined conclusion, obviously. So right then and there, you see a bias. And whenever you're talking about meat and sustainability, right, the mainstream narrative is that meat is not sustainable, blah, 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 all these lies, so on and so forth. So right off the bat, seeing the UN link and this word, sustainability, and then you could check out the conclusions of this study. If you know anything about this so-called science, you know that this is a pro-plant-based diet propaganda. Which doesn't necessarily mean that the numbers they use for meat, the figures that they have here for meat are biased or wrong, but they're definitely not going to be in favor of the meat-based diet, right? We could surely assume that much, right? I would go further than that, but I'm trying to be fair to all the angry vegans out there. Anyway, according to, let me pull up my notes here. This study and the figures used in this study, as per the United Nations, Americans, as far as the meat is concerned, right? Meat and fish over here. That is roughly 14.5% by weight and 13.5% by energy or calories of the entirety of their diet, right? So we'll take a mean out of those two numbers and call it 14%. That is a meat-based diet, according to this study, right? Because it's a pro-plant-based diet study. How is a diet based on 14% or a diet that contains 14% meat a meat-based diet? What about the other 86%? Interesting stuff, no? So this is exactly the sort of dishonesty that I've been talking about, is that you have a diet that contains a tiny amount of meat in it, and that's called a meat-based diet, right? That's exactly what I was talking about in that video that triggered some angry vegans. But, you know, that's that 14%, assuming that those numbers are even true, that 14% is not the entirety of the American population, right? Because you also have these lacto-ovo-vegetarians, other, maybe, I don't know, and vegans, let's just say, vegetarians and vegans, right? And even though if you were to combine all of those people, the numbers wouldn't drop significantly, it's lower than 14%, right? It has to be the amount of meat consumed by the entire American population, right? Of course. Now I have some more problems with these numbers, and that is the question of meat fillers. So we know that companies have artificially inflated their meat to beef it up with substances, some of them chemical, some of them plant-based, right? Wheat, gluten, other grains are mixed into the meat, and those products are considered meat products, even though in some cases there could be 40% grain or something else, right? Then there's also products such as spam or sausage, which have additives in them that are not from the animal kingdom, and most likely, or in a lot of cases, they're from the plant kingdom. and those are considered meat, right? For sure they are. Then there's also, which we'll get to in a second when it comes to dairy products, you have fake cheese, which might contain a certain percentage, 40, 50, 20, 10, I don't know, of a dairy byproduct, and then the rest of it will be like vegetable oils or something. And the number one cheese sold in America is probably, oh, I don't know, American cheese, and that's really it's a shame. They don't even call that cheese officially. It's a cheese product, right? But I guarantee you it's included in the dairy products over here, right? And then there's the question of bones, skin, and gristle, stuff that's, and even eggshells, stuff that's meat or animal products, but it doesn't really get consumed. And I understand that when it comes to plants, there's always going to be some, you know, refuse in the kitchen when it comes to that, but bones are heavy. So maybe I'm splitting hairs there, but what I'm saying to you is there are many ways to manipulate these numbers, right? And if this is a pro plant-based diet study, well, I'm sure you could fill in all the blanks. I will leave for you right now. So, once again, this 14%, which is likely an inflated number, is the portion of the American diet, which obviously would be lower if you include all Americans, those that don't eat meat. And so to say that Americans eat very little meat by comparison to all the plants they eat, well, I was making a scientific claim. Scientific because, well, I conducted my own scientific study, observing the world around me and collecting empirical data, right? And then, well, I guess the UN did a far better, more thorough job, and that's the number they came up with. Now, if you add eggs, dairy products, and animal fats into this whole calculus, you're still coming up with only 42% by weight and 30% by calories, as far as, and you're still running into problems such as, you know, all these fillers and stuff that comes in yogurts, cheeses, maybe not as much as when it comes to the meat, but all of the, where it says dairy, it isn't all dairy anyway. But if we take a mean out of that, that's 36%, right? So altogether, Americans, given all the inevitable BS included in that number, eat roughly, I would say 35%. According to this study, we could estimate, say, safely conclude that Americans eat somewhere around 35% of their diet from the animal kingdom, and the rest is plant-based, right? So to say that Americans eat a plant-based diet is actually honest and correct. But because everybody's been brainwashed with this anti-meat propaganda, as I showed you what's going on all over the world, for example, and all this nonsense that's never been proved by science, that meat causes all these diseases, right? It's never been demonstrated that that's actually the case. Even though we know that plants cause all kinds of problems in people, like that we know for a fact. That's indisputable, undeniable. We just know this, right? But somehow, even though the majority of the American diet comes from the plant kingdom, and this was the point in my previous video, we're blaming meat as the culprit, even though there's no science to back any of that. Okay? There isn't. So that was really the point that I was making, that we're being brainwashed, that our doctors, not everybody obviously, there are definitely good doctors out there, scientists, you know, all these corporations and special interest groups, what have you, they're all brainwashing us to believe that not only Americans eat a meat-based diet, but that it's meat, which is a tiny portion of the American diet, that's causing all these modern diseases. So I ask you yet again, dear vegan, because last time I asked the vegan directly, he wasn't able to answer the question. But if you know you have a problem with the truth that I present, please tell me, how is it that an ancient food such as meat, such as animal products, causes modern disease in a carnivore that eats primarily plants? All right? Anyway, Thanks for listening, guys. Give the video a thumbs up. If you yet haven't, do subscribe, and I will catch you on the next one.